rainy evening. Really appreciate it. And I'm Abby tonight, but I'm really Poppy Gall, and I'm the board co-chair of the museum, and I'm also the curator of the Lost Ski Areas exhibit, which will be up until October 19th. So if you haven't had a chance to look at the 184 lost ski areas in Vermont, take a peek at the map, read the boards, check out your hometown, and see where your lost ski area was if you don't already know. So it's bittersweet that it's going away, but we've got a great couple of exhibits coming up right after Thanksgiving. So I just also want to tell you a couple of things that are happening. We've got an online auction right now that we're doing until, what's the date? End date?
8 p.m. on Sunday.
8 p.m. on Sunday. Great, a huge amount of wonderful items, ski equipment, ski wear, lodging packages, trips to Iceland, gift baskets. I mean, a lot of really great stuff. So if you want to do a little bit of pre-season Christmas shopping, holiday shopping, do it with us. We'd very much appreciate it. So anyway, we're going to kick off with Brian Lindner, who once again has volunteered to be our fabulous moderator, ski historian. So here you go.
Thank you, Poppy. Thanks for everybody coming out tonight, supporting the museum. We really appreciate it. I think this is going to be a really cool program. Now, I personally have no relationship to skiing in Underhill other than the fact that my grandparents and dad and all my aunts and uncles all grew up in Underhill, except for one little story. My dad was the ski patrol director at Stowe, and he got done at night after sweep. They'd run him back up to the top on the single, and he'd climb up and he'd go up to the teardrop, and he'd ski down the teardrop to Underhill Center to his parents' house, my grandparents, have dinner, and they'd drive him back around the mountain again. And that worked great until the time he fell down and stuck a ski pole through his thigh, and he's up there in the middle of the, early evening, I guess, and he said, what are we going to do? I bandaged it up and skied down. So no backcountry rescue on that one. So tonight we're going to have some guest speakers here, and first we're going to start off with the roughly a 15-minute film about the Underhill Ski Bowl to give you some perspective of that. Now there's really two ski areas over there. There's the Underhill Ski Bowl, and then Jamie's going to talk about what he has discovered, which is amazing, much higher on the mountain. And he's brought artifacts and photographs of that. So tonight we have with us, first is going to be Roger Fry from the Underhill Historical Society. He's going to give us a general history of that area. Jamie Ide is going to take over and talk about all of his discoveries over there. And then towards the end, we're going to have a question and answer, and we'll have Susie Hebert, whose parents really did the Underhill Ski Bowl. She's brought her own photo album here so she can talk personally about growing up inside the ski area. And are you Grant by any chance?
I am Grant.
All right.
Over the mountain.
Yeah. So Grant, you made the film, correct?
I did.
Okay. So I'll have you make a couple of comments about it first, and then we'll go ahead and we'll roll the film, if that works for you. Okay. So at the end, we'll have a question and answer. If at any point you can't hear any one of us, be sure to holler out and let us know. So Grant Allendorf made this film, and we'll give him a moment to speak about it.
Thank you. I grew up in Underhill, Vermont. Came to Underhill in 1961. My dad was a school teacher from Boston, came up to Vermont, and we immediately started skiing at the Underhill Ski Bowl, I think at the age of 4. And when the Underhill Ski Bowl closed in the early 80s, I was headed into college and was pretty dismayed that the place closed. I used to go up occasionally to Susie's parents, Em and Bill Durborough, who were a couple of the primary ones who started it, and I tried to talk them into, getting the Underhill Ski Bowl going again. Let's see what we can do. And Bill, basically told me in no uncertain terms that it probably wasn't going to happen. Insurance rates had spiked considerably in the early 80s. I think it was the James Sunday case where where they awarded a large sum of money to somebody that was injured in skiing, and hence many of the small ski areas in Vermont went out of business around that time. So I tried to talk Bill and Em into starting the bowl up again, and couldn't get much traction there. So I decided, I think I was a junior or senior at UVM, and I decided to make a video, and that was kind of my response to doing something about the Underhill Ski Bowl. So the video is about 20 minutes long, and it kind of, we did some history, a lot of microfilm type stuff at UVM, and we put it together. Hopefully most of it's accurate, and I've set it up.
The Underhill Ski Bowl, which operated from 1937 to 1981, was a pioneering ski center in northern Vermont. Located on the former Egan Farm between the lower Stevensville and Mountain Roads, it was founded by the Underhill Winter Sports Club. This group included Lawrence Egan, Lawrence Casey, Jesse Holmes, and Giles Willey. In 1946, the property was purchased by Em and Bill Durbrow and John Durbrow and Faith Durbrow from Ruth Snow. Later, such facilities as a pommel lift, a warming shelter with a snack bar, and toilets and lights for night skiing were added. The ski bowl reached its heyday during the 1960s with ski races and meets and twice-weekly night skiing. This tape will attempt to bring back some of the fond memories and faces of Underhill's heyday in the ski industry. This video is dedicated to the memory of Fred Osgood of Essex Junction, Vermont, who was a permanent fixture at the bowl for many, many years. He was witty, creative, and was loved by all who skied there. Well, what is now the Underhill Ski Bowl eventually became the principal site of ski development in the town. Much of the early activity was on Mount Mansfield itself. In 1937, some $50,000 in public funds was spent paying federal CCC and state labor to clear a number of ski trails and to build a large parking lot in the halfway house area. One of these trails, designed by Charles D.J. Lord, Stowe's master trail engineer, was the Teardrop Trail down the front of Mount Mansfield. This dropped down from Mansfield's nose and ran some 3 miles before connecting with the halfway house trail. The teardrop is still used by many skiers throughout the winter. A 30-meter ski jump was also constructed just west of the hotel. No tows were ever built at the halfway house area. Ski activity was also occurring at the Egan Farm just east of Underhill Center. In 1937, a 1,000-foot rope tow was constructed on a site at the Egan Farm, which had been scouted out by another of Stowe's emerging ski development principals, Sepp Ruschb. Ruschb made many treks around the mountain and taught skiing at the Egan Farm from time to time. At this early stage, the Underhill development was comparable to Stowe's. Many skiers preferred the open slopes which Underhill was offering. The sponsors, the Underhill Winter Sports Club and later the Underhill Jericho Ski Club, had visions of ski trains from New York and Boston, giving their area the same boost Stowe was getting. But it was not to be. With the start of World War II, the operation was abandoned. Following the war, in 1946, John and William Durbrow purchased the Egan Farm area to revive skiing from Ruth Snow. The bulk of the tape will deal with the Durbrow years, which span from 1946 to 1981. The 1946 purchase of the ski bowl by both John and Faith and Emily and Bill Durbrow was an endeavor of monumental proportions.
We had a rope tow, and children and adults used to wear out mittens right and left. I would say probably a course of a season they wore out a couple pair, maybe one jacket. But in '65, one of the reasons for the disc lift was to perhaps do away with the wear and tear on clothing, etc.
Underhill Snow Bowl brings back some of the memories of when I was a kid. Being in Jeffersonville and Cambridge, coming down Underhill in those days was a real adventure. It was like coming to the big city. You know, they had stores and they had the hen house and all those kinds of things. My mother wouldn't let me go dance at the hen house, but she'd let me come to the Underhill Snow Bowl. So I'd get out my old poles here, nice big old poles, my big old boards, and off we'd go to the Underhill Snow Bowl. And I had a couple of experiences here. One was I learned what night vision was all about. The old snow bowl was ahead of its time. It had a few 100-watt bulbs down through the hill here, and we would ski down at night. And I learned what depth perception was, because believe me, when you skied down here at night, there wasn't much light, and you were in between the darkness and the humps and the bare spots, and you really learned how to concentrate. But the thing I remember about the snow bowl that impressed me was the most was this is where I lost a girlfriend. You see, I used to like the girls in those days, and matter of fact, I still do, but when I was at Middlebury in 1950, we used to come back here and ski, and I had a sweetheart at Middlebury that knit me the nicest sweater. It was blue and white Middlebury colors, blue with a white V-neck, and I used to wear that skiing. Made me look like one of those big hotshot skiers. Coming up the toe one day, you know how they twist? The toe's always twisted. Well, I got halfway up here and it was twisting, and it twisted me right onto the rope, and before I knew it, I was tiptoeing along, and it ripped my sweater in a million shreds. And when I got back to Middlebury, that girl would not believe that I lost my sweater that she spent hours and hours knitting at the Underhill Ski Bowl in Underhill, Vermont. So you see, if it hadn't have been for the Underhill Snow Bowl, I might be married to another woman.
And you can't talk about the ski bowl without talking about the rope tow. Bill and Fred had to keep things in line so no one would get hurt. A common practice of the older kids would be to snap the rope at the top and knock off 10 to 15 little nippers. But these incidents were kept to a minimum when Bill would get on the shotgun, alias the PA system, and reprimand the offenders. When you heard, "Mr. Loomis, I want to talk to you," you knew you were in trouble.
But I remember when the youngsters, or we call them rookies, used to come up to the ski bowl on top of the hill, and we'd be waiting for them when they came down. They'd come down with their nice new shiny gloves from Christmas, and they'd come up, waltzing up to the rope, and we're sitting back. All us guys have been there laughing and giggling. And watch this guy here now. He steps up to that rope. With about 2 seconds later, he's in the horizontal position. His skis are still there, and he's hanging on for dear life going up the rope. So finally he lets go, shakes himself off, comes back, and he says, "Okay, we'll give this guy a little help." So now I tell him, don't grab so hard. Just walk up to the thing and just let it ease it. Well, all of a sudden there's smoke coming out of his hands now. The gloves are burnt up. He's got nothing left, but he's still managing. He's still hanging on, and he'll go through the rest of the day with a bare hand. But those kids had a lot of spunk, and they kept coming back. So that was probably one of the funniest ones that we had, that just breaking these new youngsters in and break them into the system. Yeah.
From 1946 to 55, a majority of the skiers were from the Burlington area. Wood Sporting Goods on Church Street outfitted most of the locals. Bear Trap Bindings and Jar Rubbers were in at the time. IBM came soon after, and things got quite sophisticated. The Durbros started having kids' races every Saturday morning. They were called the Peanut Butter Cup races, and the winners would receive a peanut butter cup as a prize. They also had St. Paddy's Day races, Easter egg races, and a variety of other contests throughout the winter. The Ski Bowl also started a variety of careers in skiing. Billy Kidd, Tor Arnberg, the Shaws from Stowe, Julie Walcott, and Chantel Knapp were some that gained notoriety.
We had some fond times at the Underhill Ski Bowl when I was in high school, and there was a particular night we used to go up there for night skiing, and my friend Joey Hanover was riding up the tow rope, and a mouse went from one ski to the other, and I can just picture her screaming her head off with the mouse not knowing where to go, and we got a big kick out of that. And I think the other really neat thing about going up there for night skiing was hoping your sweetheart was going to come, and having the music playing, and just enjoying having some good, clean fun.
I can remember my first attempt at skiing, essentially. I was at the University of Vermont. It was 1955. Let's see, that would have been about 10 years ago now. Well, maybe a little longer. We came out on a Friday evening. You remember those crazy Friday evenings? A couple guys I knew at the university said I should go out and try skiing. This was a great place to learn. I stood up by those birch trees in the parking lot, and I looked down at the shelter, and I listened to the music, and the snow was coming down softly. Everything was perfect. The only thing that was lacking was my ability to ski. To get down that hill was a memorable experience, I can assure you. I started out on skis, and I ended up without them. And I can distinctly remember somebody down there, probably one of the kids, coming out, helping me find them.
And to ski and to fall down and to get up and to start again, and that's the whole secret of success. And I think somebody should write a book about that ski bowl.
In 1965, Bill Durbrow Jr. and Marshall Harrington cleared the slopes so that the pommel lift could be installed, which for the time was a state-of-the-art ski lift. This was a big addition to the rope tow, which caused countless pairs of mittens to be shredded over the years. The ski shelter received an overhaul too, with flush toilets, siding, and a kitchen. Music on the slopes was also added with a powerful speaker on the pommel lift. Bill tried to follow the European fad with lots of oompa music and liked to watch the skiers shake to the wild sounds of Herbie Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. If Led Zeppelin was cranking, you could be sure it was one of the Durbrow boys that was running the show that day.
I have to mention the Underhill Ski Patrol that was headed up by Merle Kennedy and a fellow by the name of Cartier. And it really did an outstanding job for us over the years. It was volunteer.
One incident that happened at Ski Bowl, this was in the evening when we were having night skiing. I remember we were practicing first aid out on the slopes. And there was a young girl with the name of Gail Pryor that worked in the ski hut. And she came out to ski this particular evening, so we were going to try a little first aid on her. So we had her fall somewhere along one of the trails, and then we all badged in on her and wrapped her up in splints and anything we could think of. So we got her all wrapped up and put her on a toboggan and took her back to the hut. Then we went off and left her laying there on the toboggan. And I don't think she cared for that too much.
We were open for night skiing, and we had special parties. People rented the bowl. And I remember one of the fun nights we had, the doctors in Burlington would rent the bowl for New Year's Eve. And my gosh, you'd look out, and there they were coming down with their tuxedos on, with their skis on. It was really great. And one night this other girl that helped me, Mrs. Flanders from Essex, she and I put on a supper for one of those nights. And we served 99 people for hamburgers and hot dogs. And the grease was so thick in the shelter house from the hamburgers, we were just dripping in it.
The next 5 minutes are devoted to rare ski footage from the 1950s and 60s.
have any memories of the ski bowl because I was very small when it was in operation. But from the stories I've heard from my aunts and uncles, it was a great place and they had a lot of fun there. And even though it closed, I still had a lot of fun there as a child, sliding and skiing, even though there were no lifts or anything. But I just wish I could have been a part of it while it was operational.
The times that are most memorable are all the friends that we've met through Underhill and Essex Junction. We would ride to Underhill with my mom every weekend and live here, Saturdays, Sundays, in the cold, ice, rain, eating hot dogs, hamburgers, doing peanut butter cup races, hat races, costumes, my mom and dad working very hard and having a good time at it. As I grew into adolescence, you meet guys, you get to ski with new people, you fall in love with people, and they take you on new adventures. And the night skiing part was all the kids from high school would come up and we would have parties. And if I was out on the slopes a little too long, I'd get a call on the microphone from my father, "Where are you?" So I'd have to come down the hill and present myself to him. The times that are also fun are when you meet new friends, and actually I met my husband here, Steve, who skied with me many times. My mother always liked him the most of all of them. And we were married, and we actually lived in the Underhill Ski Bowl Lodge our first summer. And the one time that we had a raccoon or a porcupine chewing on the line underneath the bowl, Stevie went under and shot it and shot through the gas line. So we were lucky that it didn't blow the ski bowl up. My brothers Bill, Jim, Tom, and I have appreciated the skiing aspect of this and the love they put into this business, and our fun has been wonderful. We have learned to work and to play. And my children, Jed and Emily, also skied there, and it will be something in their memory that will never be taken away. And we appreciate it. Thank you. We love you.
Over the years, I think we ran 36 years, something like that. And towards the end, which we did close in 1982, things weren't really that profitable. Costs were going up, insurance costs, etc. There were more ski areas in the area. There was more night skiing in different places. And all in all, we thought that it would be best if we closed, and we did in 1982.
Bill and I would like to thank all the people that worked hard at the ski bowl, and it was really great. We loved every one of them. I wish we'd had a snow gun though for the making of snow toward the end. That would have helped out a lot.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to do this tape.
As you have just heard, the Underhill Ski Bowl quietly closed in the spring of 1982. Only years later, as I drove by the bowl to visit friends, did I begin to experience the reality that we could no longer ski and have fun at the bowl. I never got that last gulch run, first tracks in fresh powder on Breakneck Junior, or felt the warmth of the wood stove in the lodge. I thought my kids would never experience the fun that I had as a kid. Or would they? With the permission of the Durbros, as the ski bowl had been closed since 1982 to the public for liability reasons, I decided to hike the bowl with my son Ryan. On a Saturday afternoon in January of 2000, right after a fresh snowfall, we headed to the bowl. Instead of skis, my son brought a snowboard. Since he had only been on his board a few times, the bowl presented quite a challenge. We spent over 2 hours at the ski bowl that day, and my son Ryan thanked me for the great time he had. Could the snowboarding craze of the 90s have saved the Underhill Ski Bowl? Who knows, but what a great couple of hours we had. The ski bowl is still the magical place that I remember as a kid. And again, many, many thanks to the Durbro family.
Great film. Excellent. Well done. I just feel like I have a good piece of history.
A lot of fun.
Okay, our next speaker is Roger Fry from the Underhill Historical Society, and Roger's going to talk about the history of the ski areas over in Underhill.
I'm going to get there.
Roger?
Well, Grant, you said it was a project for college.
Yeah, I guess I was off a few years.
Yeah, so
yeah, my son was
post
college, but I was thinking about college.
We wanted to know what grade you got.
What grade I got in college?
Yeah.
GPA? Won't go there. Too much skiing.
Well, they want me to give you a little bit of an overview of what some of the things you just saw, but it was interesting. It said snow bowl in the beginning. It became the ski bowl as the dirt roads took over. So that's, as it said, it started in 1937 with Lawrence Egan's farm. And can anybody guess what the price of a lift ticket was? I think, well, somebody must have said it. 75 cents for the day. One little run was 10 cents. So we've come a long way with prices of ski lift tickets. For lost ski areas, the fact that this one was 40 years, 4 years from 1937 to 1941 for a small group of the Underhill Winter Sports Club. That's really saying something for a lost ski area under the Durbros to be 36 years in business. So it's not too many of the lost ski areas that ever lasted that long. But part of the reason was the annual snowfall was 110 plus inches facing west, so it was just perfect for skiing. The other parts that were interesting was how the Durbros followed along with Lawrence Casey. They were pretty damn good advertisers. They even had advertisements on an airline called Colonial Airways out of LaGuardia, non-stop to Burlington to go to the Underhill Ski Bowl. Plus advertisement, you probably all remember the Ski Meister trains from Boston and New York City. From New York City, it was from Grand Central. And then there was another one called the Vermonter from Penn Station. So you would take this, you would get on at 9:40 at night, and you could pay extra for a Pullman sleeper car, but oh boy. Otherwise, you'd get there groggy, get to Burlington, take a bus over to Underhill Central, and it really became part of an economic engine for the town of Underhill. Because when you got to Underhill Center, you really only had 4 places to stay. It was, if you know some of them, Shannon's, Mansfield Inn, which is right across from the Underhill Center Post Office, or was. Some of them were Pleasant Valley Lodge and another one called Baker's. But these, this was the biggest business in Underhill during the heyday of the 50s and certainly the 60s. So there's Grant's video covered so much history. there's not too much more to add other than that the heyday again was the 50s and the 60s. Billy Kidd came over at age 12 and raced at the Ski Bowl, came in second, but perhaps you know some of these other names, Chantel, Nat, and Julie Walcott. They all skied at the Ski Bowl. So, I mean, it's got a great history for not just what it really was, a great family area to learn how to ski, but it also had some famous names out there as well. So,
could you maybe talk about the upper area development, the late 30s?
Sure. You mean the CCC?
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, as you all know, President Roosevelt started the Civilian Conservation Corps, and they had some great ideas and great vision. Of course, it was Perry Merrill, Charles Lord, and they not only wanted to, that's how they built the Teardrop Trail first. But when they had other trails planned, one was going to be called the Halfway House Trail. Another one we still have, the Overland Trail. And so they were going to really connect right to the Snow Bowl, the Ski Bowl. And with, sadly, the war just absolutely ended the Civilian Conservation Corps immediately. So I don't know what else you made reference. You mean the part with the ski jumps?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go through some of the artifacts that still remain on the mountain, and I can speak to that as well if you'd rather.
Sure, you could certainly do that.
Sure.
So. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Roger. We appreciate that. Okay, so our next presenter is Jamie I. And Jamie took me on a walking tour of his discoveries over there last year. And I literally went home with my jaw on the ground like, oh my God, I thought I knew Mount Mansfield skiing history, but it turns out I know nothing. The things that he's found there were just amazing. In fact, today I was in a conversation. I pulled up some of Jamie's pictures that I had on my phone, and I was showing him. I said, look at these things that he's found in the woods over there. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jamie, and maybe you can start by what caught your interest to get you going in this to begin with.
Yeah, well. Hi, so I'm Jamie Ide. I think I'm going to try sitting so I can reach the button to click to the next slide on the PowerPoint presentation instead of standing in front of you, and so everyone can see a little bit better. So a lot of the development that Roger alluded to and in the very beginning of Grant's film spoke to did actually occur on the mountain. There was a very kind of 5-year period from about 1937 to 1942, where the upper area of the mountain of the Underhill side of Mount Mansfield was developed as a major ski area to compete with Stowe and to take some of the business away from Stowe. As Brian mentioned, I wanted to kind of go through what caught my eye and how I got started on this project. So in early 2024, the Facebook algorithm, in its wisdom, decided to show me a post from the Ski and Snowboard Museum. And the post was about an online auction, which is, as Poppy mentioned, is going on now, if you want to bid on something. Never mind that the auction had ended months previous to me seeing this. It still decided to show it to me. And up for auction in the post was a map, a 1941 map of ski trails on Mount Mansfield on the Underhill side. Some of the trails I was a little familiar with, like the Teardrop, But there were trails on there I'd never heard of, like the Stevens Trail and the Halfway Trail. And then scattered on the map and indicated by the legend below were first aid caches, telephones, and the ski jump. And I just couldn't believe that all that stuff was there. So I decided to go out and look for it and see if anything remained. And it did. Spoiler alert. So the first item on the map I looked for was the lower first aid cache on what was the Stevens Trail. And in looking at the map, it appeared to me that it was just above one of the most popular trails, hiking trails, on Mount Mansfield today, the Sunset Ridge Trail, which leads from Underhill State Park. And so I set off on snowshoes in winter to look for it, and I kind of plowed through the hobble bush and then into some open slopes until I made my way kind of far up, maybe around 2,500 feet, to a section that looked very much like an old ski trail. It was very recognizable, but I did not find the first aid cache. On the way down, I kind of hung to the right side of the area I was investigating, and as I got near the bottom, I spotted the distinctive peak of it, poking up through the snow. So that's exactly as I found it. And from then on, I was just kind of hooked. I was bound and determined to go to try and find everything else that was on the map. And you can see from the image on the right, which are my kind of GPS tracks, I covered a lot of territory. It's a lot easier to look for things in the winter on Mount Mansfield or in any place because you don't have to worry about the hobble bush and you can move freely. The leaves are off the trees, so you can see, you have very good sight lines. But if there's too much on the snow on the ground, everything's going to be buried. So I did find everything on the map, but I found a lot more. You know, I kind of found the story of a group in a very short period in time when the west side of the mountain was developed for skiing. And, you know, the other presenters in the film kind of spoke to that, but I'm going to describe to you and show you the rotting, forgotten artifacts that I found in the woods. So I kind of want to make sure everyone's oriented properly because you're going to see this map quite a bit. On the left-hand side there where it says Underhill Center is Underhill Center. The Stevensville Road is the road that goes up to the Nebraska Notch and Butler Lodge trailheads if you've ever been up there. And then the mountain road in black here goes up to the state park. And then the Stevensville district, indicated there, it seems to show some skiing activity, is where the snow bowl was. It was kind of the beginner or training area for skiers. So the Overland Trail was the first trail cut by the CCC into Underhill in 1935. It's kind of important, even though it wasn't really part of the future development or the planned development of the Underhill ski area, the Winter Sports Club ski area. It's important because it offered an interconnection point to the Stowe side of the mountain. You could come over from the Bruce Trail. It's hard to see right on the edge of the slide. I think a little bit's being cut off. But you could come over from the Bruce Trail and ski over the col between Mount Mansfield and Dewey Mountain and ski down into the Stevensville area. Why you would want to do that? The only reason I can think of is if we're on the ski patrol eventually and wanted to get a hot meal from your parents. I guess. So what you can see on the map here is in Devil's Dishpan, which is kind of the height of the land, the col there. There's a natural feature called Devil's Dishpan, which is a pool of water between some rock cliffs. There's an icon for a safety cache, a first aid cache. And I had actually seen that many years ago, but I didn't know what I was looking at. So when I saw the map on the Facebook post, it instantly registered that that's what I had seen before. And if that one was still there, then perhaps the others were. And this is what it looked like. So the first aid caches were all of the same design, and they were wood structures with shingled roofs. Initially, they would have been mounted either up in trees or on posts, so they'd be high off the ground because we're hoping for a lot of snow, a lot of deep snow. I was recently hiking near Mad River Glen, and if you hike up there out of Appalachian Gap, you'll come across on the long trail about 5 of these, newer ones that are used by Mad River Glen, the ski area. So inside of them, there's a sheet metal square or rectangular tube, and a rescue toboggan would slide into there. And they did call them first aid caches, so I assume there might be some supplies strapped to the top of that toboggan. Because you're not going to call up the ski patrol on your cell phone to come rescue you. You're kind of on your own out there. So this is what it looks like today, or at least a few weeks ago. It's decaying into the forest floor, but it's kind of amazing that it's survived there that high on the mountain. Okay, probably everyone's heard of this Teardrop Trail. It's the most famous trail on the western side of the mountain. It's still extremely popular. If you go up there on a Saturday on a good snow day and try to get a parking spot at the winter parking area on Mountain Road, you better get there pretty early. If you get there a little bit late, you can have fun watching people try to do 20-point turns to turn around there. So that opened in 1937. And it had 2 first aid caches and 2 telephones on it. You can see it marked in red there. The lower first aid cache is just above the CCC road where the Teardrop Trail crosses it. It's fallen off the ledge that originally supported it, but it's still really recognizable. So there's kind of a front and back view of that, if you know what you're looking at. And then there's very little left of the upper one. I was really kind of fortunate to find it. If you're out there multiple times, sometimes it's just a matter of catching the light coming from the right direction to find something in the woods. And on the right is a photo of it in its heyday, presumably during a race event or something. And what an epic snow day that must have been. I mean, just look at the snow there. They're not even wearing hats. Amazing. I wish I'd been there. I don't have a lot to say about the Halfway House Trail. I couldn't find very much information about it, except that even the newspaper reports seem pretty lukewarm about it. It says it was built for the average skier. And so I've kind of located a little bit of the upper section of that, but not the lower section, which is kind of disappointing as an average skier. It does, when I first saw this, it just struck me as a really great shortcut to get to halfway on the Teardrop Trail instead of skinning up the teardrop as people do now, but it's lost to time. So that had 1 first aid cache on it. Another one I was very lucky to find. I don't claim to have any special skills, just a lot of perseverance. So on the left, you can see that the structure is just barely poking up through the forest floor. There's a bunch of bolts scattered around it, and I pulled some of them out and put them on a log for photos. And I do have some show and tell items here. So this isn't from that location, and I want to be very clear that I just pulled these out of the ground and didn't take apart a structure or anything to get them. Pass those around, it kind of gives you an idea of how heavy duty these structures were. Yeah, I was a little, worried they'd be used as weapons, but I figured this was going to be a pretty mellow crowd. So they built 2 rope tows near the Halfway House area, so we're kind of staying in the same general area, but jumping forward a little bit in time. So I've highlighted the inset section in red there, and you can see 2 rope tows with 2 circular trails that go around them. And those are located kind of right about here where it's very busy on the map. And they actually had I think it was 24 by 36 foot, they built a lodge there It had triple insulated floors and wool insulation. It had restrooms, and they planned to open a lunch counter and sell meals to support the activities of the sports club. So the timing could not have possibly been worse. The rope tows operated just for a matter of a week, maybe two, before they were curtailed to operating on weekends only to ration gas for the war effort. The newspaper article also mentions rationing rope, but you've already put the rope up for the tow, so I'm not sure what that but the poster, which you can kind of see, there's another print of it over there, which I really love the graphic design of, really kind of speaks to their grand plans of competing with Stowe. They had an advertising campaign, and you'll notice on the poster they're advertising 2 1,000-foot rope tows. The newspaper articles say 800-foot rope tows. I've also seen 900, so if they had kept going, they'd probably be up to 2,000 foot long by now. So the top two photos are from the base of the rope tow area, and on the left is kind of what I think is a boiler. That's visible from the CCC road if you're hiking along there, if you know what to look for. And on the right, you can see kind of one of the concrete blocks that supported the lodge building. And then the lower photo is what remains of the chimney at the mid area between the two rope tows. And that's where the halfway trail cut across diagonally to link up with the teardrop trail. But to my shock, at the top is this structure. So this is at 3,000 feet. The structure is collapsed, but you can see the stove is still sitting there. And if you sandblasted that and put some stove black on it, it'd be as good as new, I think. So that warmed the operators and skiers that were up there at the time. So I couldn't believe it when I saw that. Like, I couldn't believe it was there, and I couldn't believe I found it.
How big was this lodge?
How big was this building here?
Yes.
So the question is, how big was this building at the top? And it's really collapsed now. And the other piece I don't know, and sorry to get so long before I try to give you an estimate, is if this was a structure to house the engine, because the engines for the two tows were at the top of each. I don't think they would put it in an enclosed structure, or if it was a warming hut for the operator, or if they expected people to come in and warm themselves up. But based on what I saw up there, probably 14 feet by 14 feet would be my guess. But there are, collapsed nearby. You can see other pieces of roof. There's even some glass. So there may have been another structure or a shed connected next to it. I mean, I wasn't really able to determine exactly where the rope tow lines went. Nice thing about ski lines is that ski lifts lines is that they go in a straight line. The first time I went up there, I kind of expected to follow a line of rusty pulleys all the way up, but it's not the case. The tows have been removed at some point. So I kind of imagine a building that had a wood stove for the operator. Maybe if you were skiing, you could come in and warm up, and then it might have had like a little shed structure on the side that would have held covered up the engine for the tow. So, yes.
This particular area, how did people access it?
So the question is, how do people access this area? So one of the advantages of and I'll talk about this a little bit more, of the ski area on the Underhill side was that you could drive up to it. So you could drive up to a little bit, past where Underhill State Park is today. And from there, there were trails from the parking lot there that could take you up to the base of this rope tow. So to get to this very top point at 3,000 feet, you'd take rope tow number 1 up 800, 900, or 1,000 feet, depending on which advertising you're looking at. And then you take rope tow number 2 all the way to the top. And from here, you could ski down and connect with the Teardrop Trail, or just do a loop back. As you saw on that first map, the trails were kind of semicircular in nature.
And do we know who the operators were up in that area?
Well, the Underhill Winter Sports Club operated it. So one of the key points that's a little confusing about the development in Underhill is there's a newspaper article from I think 1937 that says Underhill Center wants ski areas, and they kind of got two of them. One of them became the Snow Bowl, and it was kind of a private venture of the Egan Farm, and I haven't delved into the history of that certainly as much as Grant or Roger have, because there's so much to learn about the upper area, which was on state land, kind of centered around where Underhill State Park is today. And because it was on state land, the state invested $50,000 into it, and the CCC did a lot of the work. There was a CCC camp in Underhill, and from reading some of the older newspaper articles, it seems that they were always kind of looking for work to justify their existence and to be maintained there. So and then there was some ongoing development by the state, but the Underhill Winter Sports Club kind of operated both areas. So we have two, kind of the upper and lower areas. All right, so we're going to pull back a little bit and talk about Underhill State Park itself. Some relics or artifacts of this era on the mountain are visible in plain sight if you know what you're looking at. The road leading up to Underhill State Park was originally a stagecoach road up to the halfway house, which is a structure located, if you've hiked up there, it's located very close to where the Eagles Cut Trail ends and meets the CCC road just below the group camping area. You can actually see the foundation in the woods. So thousands of people pass that all the time and don't know what's there. The pavilion at the state park was built for winter use. I don't know if that was the sole intent, but it was built with a large fireplace to keep skiers warm, and it was built with panels that could be placed around it to enclose it in the winter. And I've taken a careful look inside there, and I don't see any attachment points, so I don't know how that worked. But you can see, from the quote on the bottom there in the left, when it was used during an event, that it was a very active place. The group camping area was built as a parking lot for skiers. So one of the advantages, because the Teardrop Trail and the Stevens Trail, which we'll talk about in a moment, ended low on Mountain Road, you could drive up, drop someone off, and they could ski down, you could pick them up and take them back up. So in a way, it was kind of a lift service area without a lift until they added those two rope tows. So in the photo on the left, you can see some of the early trails that were built around the parking area, now the group camping area, that branched off from there. A lot of that land was cleared later on to make open slopes for skiing. And in one of the photos that was sent out with the press release for this event, if you look closely, the photo is of the ski bowl area, but if you look at the background, you can see the big white area where there's some open skiing. And so then you can see over here, the state picnic area is where Underhill State Park is. The lower parking area is what's now the parking area for Underhill State Park. That's changed a lot because they added camping facilities. And it also shows the halfway house, which was I guess in very poor condition even by the late 1930s. The Stevens Trail is my favorite trail on the mountain, abandoned trail on the mountain. It was kind of the intermediate trail to the Teardrop being an advanced skier trail. So it had some steep slopes at the very top, and then it had some more moderate and kind of touring slopes towards the bottom. In between, there were a couple areas cleared for open slope skiing.
So that's not what, when you cut across the CCC road where the teardrop comes down, that's not Stevens Trail that continues.
No, that's not this.
continuing with the teardrop.
So this point here is where is basically where the Sunset Ridge Trail starts. And you get up to the top and there's a kiosk there and a couple picnic tables, and you take that bridge to go on the Sunset Ridge Trail. So that's basically where that is. You can see there's a little connector trail that goes out to the Stevens. So if you parked your vehicle in the parking area, it was really a short traverse to get onto the Stevens Trail. If you wanted to ski the upper section, it was a little bit more work. So the Stevens Trail had 2 telephones, 3 first aid caches, and a ski jump. So this is the upper first aid cache on the trail. It's pretty poor condition, and it's kind of at a bend in the trail below where the trail crosses the Lower Cowles Trail at 3,000 feet. And moving on, this is the one I first located. This is the middle one. It's not far above the Sunset Ridge Trail. So if you're on the Sunset Ridge Trail, you pass the Lower Cowles Trail, and then a short distance later, you'll come to where the Stevens Trail crossed and went down. And this is the lower first aid cache. So this is quite far down. It's about where the Stevens Trail crossed a couple of brooks. It's it's a little bit above where Underhill State Park is. So when I've been down here a couple times, if the water's low, I've actually gone over the ridge, crossed the Browns River, and come back up on one of the curves on the CCC road. And it's just above Underhill State Park. So I mentioned there were telephones placed out there, and that kind of surprised me. I kind of assumed they were telephones for the ski patrol or for emergency use, but I have a new theory. They were Kellogg outdoor telephones type 4883, and they were about 69 or 70 pounds. And according to the catalog from 1936, the entire telephone may be handled and installed by one man. And as I'll show you, I'm not that man. But if you can look over here, this is how I found it. I just was kind of zigzagging down that area. I was actually looking for the first aid cache because I hadn't found it yet. And I saw that poking up from the snow and immediately knew what it was. When I kind of imagined what a telephone from 1937 or 30, or actually about 1940 on the ski trail would look like, it wasn't a huge 70-pound piece of cast iron. So that's what it looked like embedded in the snow. And this is actually after Ryan, I think, pulled it out. So I mentioned I have kind of a new theory about what the telephones were used for and why they were placed where they were. I've highlighted the locations of the phones in red. There were 2 on the Teardrop Trail and 2 on the Stevens Trail, but there was an additional one installed near the pavilion, which was kind of the base lodge with the big fireplace. I think they were used for ski racing because they had held many ski races there. So the starter could yell, "Go," and into the phone. Someone at the bottom would start their stopwatch, and then when they got a result, they could immediately phone it into the ski lodge where other competitors and fans would be breathlessly waiting for the result of the race.
So how do those phones work? Battery?
Yeah, they were powered by dry cells. They're called, I think Brian knows a little bit more about them than I do, but they're basically connected by a single wire that's a ground wire, and then the actual signal is kind of transmitted through the ground. So they're like military field telephones, but they're much more permanent placement. So the same style of phone was also used in mining operations as well. And the advantage of these versus a field telephone is they were weather tight, and they certainly are. So I was encouraged by a couple people that I'm not going to name to go out and retrieve this, and they also advised me to not bother. There was no need to talk to the state of Vermont about it. Just go out and get it. And always being open to questionable advice. Last December, I decided to do it. And I went out there, strapped a plastic sled to my pack, and snowshoed up there. We just had some pretty good snowfall, but we'd also had a little bit of rain. So I felt that there wouldn't be a lot of company that might see what I was doing. Not that they would understand it, but I might get some questions. So despite having a GPS waypoint, it still took me a long time to find the phone under the snow. I had to poke around quite a bit. And so the middle picture here is, well, the photo on the left is me full of hope that I'll be home for dinner. The photo on the bottom here is when I finally located, by programming with my pole, the phone and uncovered it. And on the right is after I made it down the Lower Callis Trail, which if you've been on is quite steep in sections. So I had troubles strapping it to my sled. At first I thought I would stay off the trail and go through the deep snow. That would be a little bit safer, at least at the very top part, but it kept overturning, so I re-secured it a couple times. At one point it got away from me, and 80 pounds of cast iron and ice on the slope it threatened to take me with it, but finally it came to rest before it went into a stream. So the question is what I was on, and I was on snowshoes. If I were on skis, probably won't have this many people at my funeral, but that's what would have So yeah, it was a long night, and I did finally get it home. So this photo I took once I got down to safety, kind of the end of the at that top kiosk where the Sunset Ridge Trail leaves, and I knew I just had to go down the CCC road. I still had 2 miles, but it was going to be easy grades and wide. There's a section of the Lower Callis Trail where it's cut into a side hill, and there's a stream and a precipitous drop off and a stream just below it, and that's what I was really concerned about. I spent most of the trip in front of the sled, lowering it down in front of me rather than dragging it, just trying to control it. I didn't get out of bed till afternoon the next day. And not just because of the beers I had after getting this done. So after I got it home and defrosted it, that's what I had. It's pretty well welded shut, I think, permanently. I think you would need cutting tools to get in there. And then over on the right from the catalog, you can see what's inside there. Just a receiver and a speaker, and there were batteries, but also a hand crank. And then, right behind me, and they didn't, I asked, but Poppy did not come through the spotlight I wanted. I can use my phone, I guess. It's right here. Wow. So I did retroactively get permission from the state to remove it and to donate it to the museum. Thank you for that. And last Friday, I took the state archaeologist Niels and a state forester up and showed them around. And he recorded all those sites, and they're going to enter it into a database. I don't know what that implies, but it kind of feels like the end of the Indiana Jones movie where it goes into a giant warehouse. But there is going to be some recognition of this development that occurred and has been largely forgotten. Okay, the ski jump. When I saw the ski jump on the map, I just couldn't imagine where it was or why it was. But ski jumping was very popular in the late 30s. They even built a large, I think, 30 or 40 meter ski jump at the Underhill Ski Bowl as well. And the two of them often get confused. This one was a collaboration between UVM, the Underhill Winter Sports Club, and the work was performed by the CCC. And the main goal was to get it ready for competitions, particularly the 1941 Intercollegiate Ski Union meet, which was basically the equivalent of the NCAA Division I Northeast meet. All the major colleges were there, and jumping was a big part of it. They also had slalom, downhill, slalom, cross-country, Vorlauf, I don't know what that is. But ski jumping had a moment in time. So this one, when it was built, was intended to be the second largest jump in the state, topped only by the big one at Brattleboro, which is still in use, I think, at least once a year.
Harris.
Yep, Harris Hill, yep. So I had a hard time imagining where this was because I couldn't, now that I know where it is, I just couldn't picture that they built it on the edge of a ravine across from Underhill State Park, across the Browns River, and they were actually jumping into the ravine. So they had a bridge down over the river, at least I can see some railings and the few photos that I found of it. But there are a couple of the photos come from the UVM yearbook. I mean, this was a big deal. It took me a few tries to find it. Once I finally decided, I read somewhere that it was built on a ridge, and I kind of grasped what the size of this must be, and so I started following that ridge further and further down, and I finally came across the pilings for it. And it's hard to communicate how impressive a structure this was. The pilings start out in pairs, and then they go into groups of 4, and it goes back 100 feet from the edge of the ravine. This was a massive structure. So to give you a little bit of an idea, I put my GPS tracker on one of the pilings to give you an idea of what the size is. That's a necessity for me to carry in the woods, according to my wife. But it also did help me do a lot of mapping with this. So there's a photo of the jump on the left, probably being prepared for a competition, and then on the right, I'm standing in the exact same spot a week or two ago, taking a photo. So where I was standing for that photo in 1941, there were hundreds of spectators, and I want to make sure I get this right, watching Dartmouth edge out New Hampshire in the final event. The scores were very close, but the jumping put Dartmouth over the edge, and they won the 1941 ISU competition. Maybe I'll pay a visit to the campus and see if they still have the trophy displayed.
Cool.
So it's kind of a then and now. It's not only, it's just amazing how in 80 or so years, the woods have grown up around that.
Different forest.
Yeah, there are so many cellar holes and walls and structures out in the woods. I've never been anywhere where someone hasn't been before, and they all have a story. So that's kind of the end of my tour of these artifacts, and those are my tracks from last winter on the Stevens Trail. So it's kind of the end of the tour, but there might be a new beginning here. If I know anything about backcountry skiers, if they see a set of tracks disappearing into the trees, someone's going to follow them. So maybe people will start using the Stevens Trail again. It's a lot easier than the teardrop. Thank you.
Well, as you can see from Jamie's presentation, the stuff that's out there in the woods is really pretty amazing. So closing up here, Susie, Yeah, would you like to come up and say a few words about the snow bowl or ski bowl?
Yes, she would. Come on, Susie.
You were there, you lived it, and
I would just appreciate all of it.
Susie actually taught me how to ski when I was 4. So I always remember that. Her brothers also helped all the youngsters to ski. And as you might have garnered from the video, and also I'd like to thank Jamie, everybody. Give Jamie a round of applause. That was amazing how much research and time he spent on the mountain. But getting back to the ski bowl, I think in the part of our assignment was to kind of talk about the personal nature of the ski bowl. And my parents would drop us off in the morning at, what time did it open, Susie? 10? And pick us up in the afternoon. And people from Essex, Jericho, Underhill, it was a very, very safe place to go. It was just amazing. Their family, we just have so many great experiences from the ski bowl. And again, Susie taught me how to ski, taught me how to get up the lift. The pommel lift was a lot of fun. People would put it under their arm, not good. Many people would put it between their legs and sit down, and they would, it was definitely a learning curve to the pommel lift. But her entire family, and it was definitely a community-based ski area, and we have such fond memories about it. Anything you'd like to add, teacher?
All I can say it was a ball, and just continues in all of us.
excellent.
I agree. Let's give the Dirt Row family a round of applause.
Are there any questions for our panel tonight? Comments?
Yeah.
Yes.
I remember skiing at the snow bowl, and you could look up and see that ski jump you're talking about when I was young. And I always wondered where it was. Now I have an idea.
But there was one at the ski bowl.
But the one you can see it up on Mount Mansfield. You look from the ski bowl up on the mountain.
Yeah, I have heard from other people that, and if you search online, which I've spent a lot of time doing, that they have memories of seeing the ski jump kind of rotting away in the 60s and maybe into the early 70s. So it was visible, and it really, one of the advantages of jumping into a ravine is the other side of the ravine is a great place to watch from. So it would have been very visible from someone driving up the CCC road or the mountain road above the state park.
You know what kind of a meter jump it was? How big?
It's been reported as a 30 or 40 meter. I call it 40 because, like the advertisement, getting exaggerated. We'll let Harris Hill take the number one spot, though. I don't know how big that is.
So I was wondering, did the CCC build it?
Yes, they built it.
That's how they actually had a way to do it, because back then they had a crew there.
They did have a crew there, but from reading old newspaper reports, it was almost like the CCC was always looking for work and looking for something to justify keeping a camp in Underhill, and so they're almost like hired help at times with state money or federal money. Yeah, but yeah, having a group there to do the work, and if you walk up through the state park, you can see a lot of the stone work they did, especially in the drainage work, culvert work. And it's still working today. It's really impressive stuff. And they didn't leave a lot of signs behind. For example, I've looked all over that pavilion, and they didn't carve their name into the cement or into stone or anything. They just did the work, and we're happy with that.
Jamie, this is just fantastic. Like, you've taken us all on a treasure hunt on a mountain that we thought we knew.
That's how I felt about it as well.
So thank you for that. I'll just share a couple things. One, I interviewed Charlie Lord about the teardrop and why it was there, and it was basically Underhill wanted something for their side of the mountain. I remember asking him why he gave it that name. He said, Well, it skied so fast it made tears come from her eyes. He said, we didn't love it as a race trail because it had a double fall line, but it had, you know, we didn't have power to equipment, so we worked with the mountain, but that's what we were stuck with. The other thing, I'm so interested about these other trails, so the Halfway House Trail is exactly the area that when you ski the Teardrop today, that locals cut right into an area of beautiful open lakes.
Yep.
And it makes me think that is maybe the Halfway House.
Well, there were other trails, I think, designed by Perry Merrill or scouted by him, that were built at the same time that the rope tows were installed. And I think that's a remnant of that. But there were many trails there and open areas cleared for skiing. And if you walk up there, I'm always kind of looking for where are the birches, because that's the transition species that comes in.
Well, the last thing is, when you mentioned here that, backcountry skiers today may find uses. John Higgins, the late, great head of the Mansfield Ski Touring Center, when he recut a lot of the historic trails, the Steeple Trail, things like that, here in the Ranch Valley, he was able to do it. The state was very strict, of course, about new trail cutting, but old trails were grandfathered. So he got permission from the state forester. He was able to point to the map, maybe the same map you used, to say, this was a trail. And they were skeptical, but indulged him and said, well, if you can find old blazes, you're allowed to restore an old trail. So as I see these things here, it maybe a new generation could follow that same grandfathering to restore some of these.
Yeah, I asked the state forester, Catherine, who's not in the authority to make this type of decision. I was asking her questions like, what is kind of the legal status or protected status of the teardrop, because I know it gets maintained, and how does that work? And she said, because it's the teardrop. And so there really isn't any kind of legal framework with the state to keep these open, and maybe that's for the best. Rules can go cut both ways, right?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep, one more.
Just funny story, I was hiking Halfway House the other day, and I was like, this is a freaking ski trip. Like, on certain aspects of it, like, cuts in between it and weeds, but I just was curious where the rope tows were on the left side.
So if you're hiking up the CCC road, before you reach there's a viewpoint, and then just beyond that is the height of land before it drops down a little bit. So not too far before that, if you look off to the left uphill, you should be able to spot that boiler. It'll get a little bit easier when the leaves drop off the trees. But if you want to go hiking up there anytime, I'm up for it.
Okay, well, thank everybody. Thanks to our panel, to Roger, who's in the back, Jamie, Grant, and Susie. I really appreciate everything that you guys contributed tonight, and thank you for visiting the museum. Keep in mind that grants and that sort of thing are drying up. Please support the museum. We appreciate it. Thank you for coming tonight.